this meeting to order. Hey, are there any announcements? Not hearing any. I do have a question. Is there anybody with us electronically? No, miss. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Okay. Do I have a motion from anybody to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Aye. Very good. The agenda is approved. Public forum. I'm not hearing anybody electronically. Not seeing any live humans in the audience. I believe there's no one to discuss any items on the public forum. Perhaps managers have an item. If not, we'll take that on to something later. Okay, consent calendar. Has anybody had a chance to look at the treasurer's report and the draft meeting minutes?
I looked at the meeting minutes.
Yes. So I'll give you all 10 seconds to look at the, actually what you could do is go over it quickly. It's, the main.
Was there something that changed?
Nothing down here. Mr. National Insurance Group, we did pay that, thank goodness, okay. Has anybody noticed any irregularities or anything that they would like to discuss? With that said, Rick, you have provided us with a nice report at the end, and I would like to discuss that under managers, if you're okay with that.
That sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm making a note here in terms of the note that you're made about 145,000 in the right-hand column on the treasurer's report.
Right-hand column in the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
There's been on there.
I don't have a specific explanation.
Okay.
My suspicion, strong suspicion, is that we've had some fund flow issues, getting money coming in at US Bank and getting to PMA,
Okay,
and that may be throwing things off. So I've been tracking a lot of that.
okay,
And we will see something come on the books, like the deposit for Washington County tax levy,
yes, sir.
and then it goes off and then comes back on another day or two later. And I suspect what is happening is that we're still shaking out what the situation is and what the process is, and that there's some delay. This is causing a delay in the way things get reported. And so I
Okay,
suspect that's throwing things.
that seems like an easy fix in light of, excuse me, in addition to us, when you track it, that we actually have a record of it that indicates what has happened.
Yeah.
Very good.
And a lot of that is just a matter of getting used to a new system.
Of course,
Where do you look for reported information?
you're a stalwart, Rick. Thank you. I appreciate that. Did you have a question, Mr. Brock? Or
Nope.
Very good, sir.
Do we usually keep zero in that US Bank checking account? Is that just?
Yeah, that's the whole deal there, is
You
that
have to.
any money that comes into the account goes directly into PMA.
Okay.
And so we're making whatever the interest rate is at PMA at the time in the money market.
Okay.
So that was substantial, and that's the heart of the matter of why we switched banks. It's one of the key issues.
Mm.
Okay, with that said, well, if you feel comfortable, I'm going to make a motion to approve the treasurer's report and our minutes of the regular meeting.
And
June, I'm sorry.
Engineer Hanson, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but there was revision needed for the meeting minutes.
So the rest,
Thank you for the
Month.
reminder.
oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Counselor. What did we miss?
Mr. President Manders, on the third page of the draft meeting minutes,
What number?
line 103.
103, a motion was made by Brock and seconded by Marchand.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Listening to the recording, I don't believe the motion included directing Susanna to prepare the resolutions. I believe the motion only included approval of the permit.
You see,
That's what I recall, just approval of the permit as it was presented.
okay, is there a resulting discrepancy because we didn't do that? Or are we okay with this?
So, Mr. President, I believe on line 103, starting at the word to direct,
Okay,
that should be deleted. All of line 104 should be deleted. All of line 105 should be deleted. And 106 should be deleted up to and including the word and,
okay,
the capital wise.
Yeah, that,
very good.
that was a separate discussion from the other.
Thank you, Counselor, for bringing that up. Thank you, John. So I will make a change in my motion, a revision to approve the meeting minutes minus the, with removal of line 104, 105, 106 up to and on page 3 of the meeting minutes and the treasurer's report. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved and seconded.
Aye.
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 Very good. That is approved. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you all again. Got to catch this stuff, right? Okay.
Did we
Yes, sir.
move on the treasurer's report as well?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so you,
Yes, sir.
so it is a consent agenda. Thank you.
There was, yes, sir. That's okay. Now let's move to updates, requests. Business and reports. Attorney, you have anything for us?
Yes, included in the packet was a memo prepared by Attorney Torseth about the variance criteria. In it, she summarized kind of the two bases that we look at when evaluating variances. One is the Minnesota statute, and then kind of the more specific one would be Rule 12 of the Valley Branch rules. So I believe this was mostly just provided for informational purposes, and if anyone has questions, I can field them. I always think the most important, the easiest thing to forget about variance requests is that economic hardship cannot be the reason for not following the rule. So if it's just too expensive to be feasible, that alone is not enough to grant a variance. So Susanna also prepared a checklist of sorts, kind of a worksheet to evaluate these different statutory or rule-based requirements. So that was in the packet as well.
If I may ask, Mr. Bill, were you involved in that? Because you did bring up some pertinent information.
Yeah, I had contacted when this was
Right.
originally sent out, Attorney Torseth, asking her, because I know there was some discussion when we were on the boat for that workshop the other night about the uniqueness of the situation and how that played in. And I was kind of looking from her for more of a definition of what the courts have interpreted in case law, or if there's something further in the statute on uniqueness, the uniqueness test, basically.
Okay.
I don't see anything really fleshed out in here. I don't know if Susanna found anything. more on
That
that.
I'm aware of.
So, I don't know if we want to, have you guys maybe look at that. It's, I actually didn't look at I just got back from out of town yesterday, so I didn't see if she responded at all and said I couldn't find anything, but I thought that might be helpful as well, as to just, you know, kind of see in the past what that uniqueness of care of the properties actually means, you know. I think in that boat example we had, well, it was a smaller property than the other surrounding property, so therefore it was unique, but that wouldn't really make it unique because you bought a smaller property than the surrounding property. So I'm just wondering if there's any interpretation of that, so we can look at a situation like when we had the fence that went through the, that last variance request went through
Right.
the wetland, you know.
For the,
Solar.
solar
For the
panels.
solar, was it unique because it was solar? Would that actually, is that a valid uniqueness argument of it, or is it not? Just see if we could flesh something like that out a little more. And I'm assuming that there's probably been people who've not been granted a variance and sued because of it. And then a case law has been generated, so that the courts have probably weighed into what's unique and what's not. And maybe we want to take a look at some of that just for when variances requests come up for us.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. Mhm.
That'd be a fun thing.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for caring about how fun it is. Yeah, it'll be a blast.
It's not as boring as accounting.
Just a.
Yes, sir,
comment or a
please.
Question. You know, in the, you know, the second section here, I wrote down a note wondering whether or not there's some way in which we can consider public benefit. So I think that it seems to me sometimes there's value for the district that comes out of approving a variance, or can be
Right.
built into the way that variance is worded. That ends up, everybody wins on it. And
As it
I'm
should
wondering
be.
if we can, you know, if we should, you know, if we have a way of considering that in the way we, you know, decide it.
I do think, so one of the Rule 12 elements is the effect of granting the requested variance on the entire district and the watershed management plan, which I think could be positive or negative. You know, if there's a positive effect, that would weigh in favor of granting the variance.
Okay.
And I think it absolutely can be considered.
Mhm.
So at this point, without nailing anything down, we are looking at this on a case-by-case basis. And we can make a determination, because we have one coming up right now, right after this, and we're gonna play with this one and see what we have. Everybody feel free to weigh in. If everybody's okay, I'd like to move to 2024-31 permit variance request. Now, John, the crux of this is simple. They want to take 25 feet, and it should be more. Is that correct?
And Mr. President, so on the screen and include your packets, a markup of their drawing, and I distributed a more up-to-date design. But the issue really is right at this intersection. This is the entrance into Montevideo High School and Middle School. And the project involves constructing a paved trail on the south side of 75th Street North, 12, County Road 12. And there's this little bit of pavement that is within 25 feet of a wetland.
Okay.
Federal rules say prohibit impervious surfaces within 25 feet of a wetland edge or the ordinary high water level, whichever is greater. So it's all about I tried to mark a little bit in red, the corner of the sidewalk being within 25 feet. This other area is hydraulically entirely within Rice Creek Watershed District, but part of it's legally within Valley Branch Watershed District. I asked them if they could shift the trail closer to the road to avoid the impact or to keep the pavement at least 25 feet away from the wetland, and they've agreed to do that. So the only outstanding issue is really this little corner of pavement. I handed out the questions that I had included in your packet, and I had sent from the applicant. Questions like, would this be slightly shifted just a little bit to the east and to avoid the impact and line up with this ramp over here, maybe shift this a little bit too. And I don't have the response in front of me, but I believe his response was no, based on 80A requirements, it pretty much has to stay there. I also asked, well, could you not even have this section of the trail and come over here instead? Could you just cross the road right here? And that's when he said, well, actually, we've been told that we need to have a crossing here and a crossing here. And that's what's shown in the handbook. So the approximate area of imperviousness within the 25 feet, I guess, is less than 50 square feet.
Is there any way that they could make that section of the sidewalk still complying with that road path, ADA, and make it put in pervious pavers or something like that in there, so it wouldn't actually be an impervious surface?
The way the Watershed District rules say it's an unmowed vegetated buffer, 25 feet. So if it's a trail, it's going to be mowed, and then there's also no impervious surface within it.
But if it isn't the impervious surface there,
Then they would
That's the
still not be
buffer.
allowed to mow it.
pardon,
They would not be allowed to mow it. Based on that. I think probably they would, they're not online. I would guess their response might be for ADA requirements that they need to mow.
mhm.
So I have a question. Is this something that we need to contact these folks about for us to trigger a tabling of this permit here today? Or is this something that we might be able to resolve?
I think it's up to the board. If the board thinks that they have not provided enough information for the board to make a decision on whether to grant the variance or not, I think
It's your
that's
prerogative.
that's the whole discussion on variance and stuff.
So maybe, how about if we just work through the worksheet
Yep,
and see how it shakes out
right now.
as a test?
Okay.
I was actually thinking of something more rather than having like something that would need to be mowed in there, like when I was representing Ramsey, Washington, their driveway or whatever it is has that
Forest pavement.
porous pavement that then wouldn't have to be mowed, right?
No, but that Valley Branch would consider that impervious, but then a BMP, so it's in the past, in a situation like this, in the neighborhood that you live in, the managers compromised and said it needed to be a boardwalk. I don't know if that would meet the requirements for ADA for this kind of trail.
I said boardwalk.
Well,
Again, it's just this tiny little triangle of this pad that
yeah,
is.
it seems to me that like a porous surface, even though it doesn't fit the rules, would be better than a boardwalk in terms of durability, just, usability, ability. and stuff.
Just one thing that they pointed out in their variance application is that this trail would be tilted toward the road. So stormwater runoff from the trail would not go to the wetland, it would go toward the road and then be conveyed to the west into some stormwater management features that are in Spice Creek watershed.
Mr. Brock,
I was just gonna ask, we're by the school or the library, they did porous pavers, you know, it was kind of a gravel underlayment and then pavers that have, you know, just have spaces built into them and, I mean, it's that there wouldn't involve mowing with an all gravel, you know, and surface like that in, well, it's underneath, it's just small spaces. I mean, is that something that might be a?
Yeah, I think either one, like Manager Armstrong or what you're saying, they're both porous pavement.
Yeah.
So I guess it gets into interpretation of the Valley Branch rules that say needs to be unmowed vegetated buffer 25 feet upland from the delineated wetland edge.
Yeah, it's
And
not
It's not
vegetated.
really vegetated.
Okay.
Some people can argue it's not.
Brock, you suggested earlier that we look at the variance worksheet,
Correct.
and this might be a good idea. Let's, shall we? Number one, they're proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner. That seems like a yes to me. Okay. Two, unique physical condition of the land, water, involved that may result in the extraordinary and unnecessary hardship from strict compliance Valley Branch Watershed District rules.
I mean,
It doesn't
it
seem
appears
like
to
that.
me that it's competing regulated, maybe the ADA thing is butting heads with us or.
Yeah.
And I don't fully understand their requirement to have that on both sides. I know you said they were asked to do that, but I don't fully understand the request to the need for that. That must be some safety thing for the kids crossing.
Manager Brock, their response was, we were directed to add a crossing to line up with the northwest ped ramp, MnDOT EDA, attaches updated plan sheet showing that this crossing. Additionally, there will be a future trail constructed on the north side, facade 12, to provide a connection to the school. This eastern ADA crossing will be needed and highly utilized for that future trail crossing.
That answers that question.
There. Would that be a yes?
This is where having some case law or something that pointed us to what actually defines unique, helpful, I would think, in a case like that.
I would tend to say yes, but I could see how easily somebody could say no.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, just a matter of how you want to.
Your, yeah, brass tacks, that sort of thing, yeah, sure. But in this case, we're gonna weigh this further, but to me, it seems like it's that big a deal. You know, in other words, is this variance, if everything else pans out, is that question going to hurt us in the end? But we don't benefit, meaning the community, the district, et cetera, et cetera.
Is
Yes,
the ADA requirements, that's putting a unique condition on the site
yeah,
in terms of what the restrictions are and the two, the two crossings maybe could even be interpreted.
that seems to allow their variance.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
It's
It's
also the
unreasonable.
constraint of the highway, right? I mean, they can't meet the 25-foot buffer requirement because the road's there. So that's the physical condition of the land in relation to where the wetland is. And this might be another thing for us to confirm by looking at the case law. My understanding of kind of looking at these factors is that it doesn't need to be all of them. It's a balancing test between all the factors. So even if one answer is no, you have to look at kind of the relative proportion and weight of each thing. So to your point, President Marchand, if this one's a no for whatever reason, but then number 4, the effect of the variance on the entire district is so negligible because it's this tiny area, I would be willing to defend your granting of the variance, even though number 2 was a no.
Okay. So we're more or less comfortable with this one. So I'd like to move on to 3, unless somebody has something. So is the landowner's problem due to circumstances unique, the property not caused by the landowner? I think so.
Yeah, that's a yes.
Yeah, that's a big yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What effect would granting the requested variance have on the entire Valley Branch Watershed? Little to none, right?
Well, I think it slopes, like they say,
Away from.
away from it.
That's a good thing.
That's proper rice creek.
Yeah.
Right.
This is We didn't say that. Okay. So. Little to none. Number 5, what effect would granting the requested variance have on Valley Branch plan? I don't foresee anything. This is on our rules and regs, and anything coming up on our 10-year plan doesn't seem to affect it. That's my opinion.
Agree.
Yep. Okay, you feel comfortable with that? Okay. Number 6, will the landowner's proposed property use alter the essential character of the locality? No. It would not alter because they're more or less going along with what we want, except for that little section because of the constraints from the road and the fact that they have to create that spot. Does that make sense? Simple enough? Okay. It would not alter. So this is an answer that if it flies with us, that no is going to be the answer for these. Okay. 7, has the application submitted provided sufficient documentation regarding number A, the exceptional conditions or peculiar difficulties claimed? D, has not or has?
Well, I guess in the sense that, I mean, they say that the ADA says this, but have we, John, have they sent anything over that says the ADA requires? I mean, we're just kind of taking their word for it. But I mean, maybe that's their interpretation of what the ADA said. Maybe if our attorney looked at it, they would say, well, that's not really what it says, that it has to be on both sides of the.
That's clearly a good point, and I guess we have to pay attention to detail, but that brings me back to what I had said initially, which was, do we need to table this? Because now we need to get information from the ADA to put some weight on this argument. Should we? Should we trust these individuals for this thing, gentlemen?
From my perspective, the applicant has to attest to the facts in the application and the supporting materials, and I don't see any affirmative obligation on the district to then investigate every claim they make of an obstacle, and I think actually that might open up more liability for the district and chasing those questions down.
Therefore,
Therefore, we accept what it said.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And if something's glaringly obvious, once the, engineer reviews and I just, with the confidence I have in Bar Engineering to review things and
Right.
generally within the realm of what's practical on the site. But investigating different regulatory compliance, it seems,
We're taking their word and then
Yeah.
we can back it, and we can also finger point if something goes badly.
right.
If I could use that phrase.
Yeah, you have to rely on the information provided to some extent.
Hear what she said about bar. Anyway. The resulting impacts from approval of the variance. Yes. Do have a reasonable understanding of that. resulting impact of approval is that we are not going to see, be considered, please feel free to disagree if you like, damaging any wetland or altering any of our rules and regs and the properties significantly.
Lay a motion on the table if you want.
Do it.
Make a motion that we approve permit 2024-31 and that we grant a variance based upon the information submitted for the easternmost area of approximately 50 square feet that are within the 25-foot buffer. We allow variance to allow that.
Yes, sir. I will second that motion, and I will add that that was good attention to detail. Your motion.
So,
We're looking at each other. With the special conditions, is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking, yes, the special condition, the conditions listed in the memo, and I'm also, if it's open for discussion, Mr. President, I'm also curious if the Attorney Kirschner for the meeting minutes, if the motion to approve the variance based on information submitted for the easternmost intersection crossing, if that's adequate or if there needs to be additional documentation.
In the minutes themselves,
Yes.
I think the elements of the discussion and going through that worksheet should be included.
yeah, I'll amend my motion also to say that our decision on the variance is based upon the results of our going through this Olive Branch Watershed District variance worksheet that was provided to us tonight.
And I would second that.
I,
Aye,
Aye.
we're good. That's some good lawyering there, you guys. I like it. You guys don't mess around. Okay. Okay, so we covered that. Now this one's gonna get interesting. So John, I want you to lead us into this and give us a clear explanation of what's happening because of what is going to happen. So gentlemen, sit back and enjoy this one. You're gonna find this one good. You will, you'll see.
World Lake has experienced some high water issues recently. And a few weeks ago, the wastewater treatment facility person for Cimarron contacted Washington County, and Washington County pumped Rose Lake, the water from Rose Lake, into a wetland that then discharges into Horseshoe Lake to prevent Rose Lake from flooding Cimarron's wastewater. So I was in the area, I think this was the night of the workshop on the water, and so I stopped by Rose Lake and Cimarron's wastewater facility to get a better understanding of what the water levels were and how at risk their system was at flooding. In that meeting, the wastewater, I communicated with the wastewater facility person who was on site, and he made some claims that seemed to suggest that he believes that Valley Branch Watershed District is responsible for some of the flooding problems recently. So I put together some slides, went through some history of what's gone on at Rose Lake to understand if he is correct or not based on the information I have. So I put together some slides here, and then it kind of wraps up with some suggestions for the managers to consider and how you might want to manage Rose Lake, because Washington County has organized a meeting next Tuesday in their public works facility, North Shop, to really develop, start discussing at least a flood reduction, a flood strategy discussion. And so the agenda is on the screen right now. It's basically talking about the current status, looking at the treatment plant issues, and what options might have for moving forward. So as I think most of you know, Rose Lake is in between Keats Avenue and Manning Avenue, and that straddles 10th Street. It's all in the city of Lake Elmo. Back in 1936, there was a road that went around Rose Lake. So in that circle where the Cimarron lagoons are currently. 1950, the USGS had a quad map that shows topo, and you can see that if Rose Lake, which was called Sunfish Lake at that time, if it were to overflow, it would have to get up to between an elevation 880, which is this contour, and 890, which is this contour. So it would overflow into this low area and then overflow to the north at northern blue area that you see as part of Horseshoe Lake. So 1957, moving forward, you can still see that the road would go around Horseshoe Lake or around Rose Lake. And the lagoons still have not been constructed. 1964, now the county road goes right through the lake. And there's access to a farmstead that also goes through the lake. So blow up of that area. The lagoons still have not been constructed. The 1967 USGS quad still shows overflow on the north side of the county road and into Horseshoe Lake. You can see there's this road driveway. 1969, similar. 1975, now you can see that Cimarron has been constructed. I don't know the exact year it's constructed, I just know it's early 1970s. And then you can see that they've manipulated Goose Lake. They've built this berm here, and this is what I'm calling the polishing pond they have. And then this is kind of their primary system, or comes in and they deal with the solids. And I think this is their first settling lagoon, and then this is their polishing lagoon. So as a summary, both in 1950 and 1967, topo shows that the lake would have to get up to between elevation 880 and 890 before it overflowed to Horseshoe Lake. In the late 50s, early 60s, Washington County bisected the road. The driveway was constructed to the north. Around 1971, the south lobe was divided and the sewage treatment plants were constructed. And digging through files, we have documentation that in 1979, the PCA issued a MPDS permit that allowed Cimarron to discharge effluent from their system into Rose Lake.
Sir, one quick question. When did the Valley Branch Watershed District come into existence?
November 13th, 1968.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
So less than 10 years after Cimarron's wastewater treatment facility was constructed, they started having flooding issues. 1980, lake level is reported to be at 879. Looking at today's topo, that would be about a foot below the polishing pond. The city of Lake Elmo hired a consulting firm, TKDA, to prepare a report on alternatives and how to address the flooding. And the city assisted Cimarron by pumping Rose Lake to basin, the north basin of West Lakeland storage site. So that's near Neal Avenue and 10th Street. 3 years later, there were again high water levels threatening flooding. And at that time, Valley Branch Watershed District approved a permit that allowed Cimarron to pump water from their system into some infiltration basins, or a basin at least, near Oakland Junior High, south of Rose Lake. Apparently those infiltration basins didn't function, so they stopped pumping water there.
Jumping forward a few years, in 1986, Valley Branch recalculated its 100-year flood elevation before it had been at 888. But in 1986, determined that Kramer Pond to the southwest would not overflow, and so that water would not contribute into Horseshoe Lake, and so Rose Lake's 100-year flood elevation was lowered 2 feet. 1987 is when Project 1007 was completed, and so Horseshoe Lake's outlet, so Horseshoe Lake is downstream, remember, that outlet was modified. And I'm throwing a lot of elevations at you, and I have a profile coming up that hopefully will help you understand these things a little bit better. 1994, Tartan Park, who owns most of the property around Horseshoe Lake, they did some filling on one of their golf course greens, and that impacted some wetlands, and so they did some wetland mitigation. And the area that they did the mitigation is between Rose Lake and Horseshoe Lake. In doing that, it appears that they also lowered the overflow. So the overflow up until now had been around this 888 elevation. The grading that they did lowered it to about 882. So Rose Lake would not have to flood so high in order to overflow to Horseshoe Lake. Year 2000, Washington County did 2-foot topo. They flew the whole county and developed the topo maps. Based on that, it looked like the overflow from Horseshoe Lake to this wetland area that 3M constructed is around 883. There's a secondary overflow that looked like it was maybe the original overflow around 889. And the berm between the polishing pond and Rose Lake is this around 880. 2007, Met Council brought sanitary sewer up to I-94 into Lake Elmo. 2008, St. Croix River is listed as impaired for excess nutrients, phosphorus. 2010, Rose Lake and Cimarron Ponds were mapped on FEMA floodplain maps. 2011, the DNR flew the area and updated the topo maps. Here, the Rose Lake overflows approximately 882.2, and the polishing pond berm is around 879.9. So they're all generally the same, but they're going up and down a couple of tenths here and there. 2013, City of Lake Elmo brought sanitary sewer up from I-94 to basically Reed Park, Lake Elmo Avenue. And then 2017, Royal Golf Club at Lake Elmo was designed. In 2018, it was constructed. But engineers for that development, they did a survey of this area, and that survey showed that there was no culvert or outlet of Rose Lake. It still had to have this overflow at this elevation be 2.2. And the overflow between this wetland that was constructed in Horseshoe Lake is 879. That subdivision, that part of that subdivision was constructed in 2017, and so then developers do what's called as-built drawings or record drawings to see how well they constructed it based on the plans. And those plans show that they constructed it pretty well, although this overflow, what they did is they constructed a culvert where the natural overflow used to be, and then they put a road over that culvert. That culvert invert appears to be about 0.2 of a foot higher than what the overflow was prior to the development. So a lot of numbers I threw at you, but so this is hopefully going to help you picture it a little bit better. So this is north is not up. North is basically to this corner here. So you can see Manning Avenue here, 10th Street here. This is the first Cimarron Lagoon. This is the polishing pond. Here's Rose Lake. This is this wetland mitigation area that I was talking about. And then this is Horseshoe Lake. This red line is basically where the next slide will show a profile. It's a very simplified profile, just to try to
John, another quick
focus on
question.
certain areas. Sure.
I don't think this is far off, and it'll and it'll come into focus when we discuss this more. But that first lagoon, so this is where the effluent flows. That's the polishing pond, no? You see which one I'm talking about, where the red line starts? What's going on?
And the way I understand it is you can somewhat see these structures here. And so the sewage comes in and it goes into this circular area here where they deal with the solids.
Right,
And then from there, it goes into this lagoon.
Okay.
And then next into this polishing lagoon.
okay, so,
And the berm between this polishing lagoon and Rose Lake is what's low. It's low in this area down.
okay. So the big question I have, is there a concern for, or has there ever been that you might be aware of? This might be an MPCA question about vectors or other disease transmission, insects, organisms, anything that might be an issue with that lagoon. Nothing ever's been brought, okay. Okay, and that'll be pertinent later, but go ahead. Thank you.
So this is a very simplified profile of all those elevations that I was talking about. So here you have the treatment pond, the polishing pond, Rose Lake, 10th Street. So there's a culvert that connects the north-south lobes there. This is High Point that's been manipulated over the years. There was a low, this is kind of that future wetland mitigation area in that Horseshoe Lake. So back until about 1993, Rose Lake and the ponds, in order for any water to leave the system, would have to get up to this elevation, approximately 8 feet. In approximately 1994, this high point was lowered with the wetland mitigation. So instead of 888 as the flood elevation, it came down to 882.5 or thereabouts. But you can see that still Rose Lake would flood into the polishing pond at that elevation. In 2017, this ground here went back up, but they put a culvert in to match what it had been, that overflow. So again, this didn't change, and still the Cimarron polishing pond could be flooded by Rose Lake if water wire loses. Some other information, Washington County did a survey of the perimeter between the polishing pond and Rose Lake. Their survey came up with a low point elevation of 80.17. So they're coming up with something a couple tenths of a foot higher. In 2020, Washington County pumped Rose Lake into that mitigation area to prevent the flooding. And now more currently, Valley Branch issued a permit to Cimarron to rehabilitate these rapid infiltration basins closer to Oakland Junior High. The wastewater facility manager that I talked to said that they don't really work, and when they pump too much water in there or much water in there, it raises the water table around them and it saturates the farmer's field next door, and the farmer gets upset. In 2022, the PCA was continuing to look at the PFAS issue in the area, and this is the map from then. I'm guessing it's probably changed since then, but the hotter colors show where the higher concentrations of PFAS are, and you can see that it's just covers part of Rose Lake, but the hottest concentrations are closer to Horseshoe Lake and the church on 12th Street. Last year, Valley Branch again looked at better information and more recent precipitation information and calculated the 1% probability flood level. Here came up with elevation 882.8, which is still 2.9 feet below the low point of the polishing pond. So the Rose Lake and the polishing pond could flood together. So Valley Branch did not identify any dwellings that would be at risk of flooding. Okay. I'm not exactly sure when Washington County started the pumping. It was around June 22nd, and they finished around the 26th.
The water level, I don't believe they had an accurate measure of what the water elevation was. When I was out there on a Monday, to me, it looked like it was 2 to 3 feet below overtopping the berm. But there had been predictions of some significant rain coming up. Again. Some other, I think, useful information to know is that Stillwater School District is working with the city of Lake Elmo to look at how to provide sewer to Oakland Junior High. Apparently their septic system isn't working as well as what they'd like. And Lake Elmo Elementary School is being designed to be at the northwest intersection of Lake Elmo Avenue and 10th Street, so just kitty corner folks. They're looking at connecting that to sanitary sewers. Again, Valley Branch didn't include Rose Lake in the big study with Army Corps of Engineers because there weren't dwellings that were identified as being at risk of flooding. And the thought was that eventually Cimarron will be connected to sanitary sewer. Problem. Major problem will probably disappear. Some of the flood mitigation strategies could be that you keep Rose Lake landlocked. And you connect Cimarron to sanitary sewer and you did decommission the lagoons. Maybe you could get by possibly with building the berms higher between Rose Lake and the sewage lagoons. Of course, if you did that, you might be probably reducing a little bit of storage, and so they might have to address that issue.
Very quickly, guesstimation. That particular cost, whoever's responsible?
I don't know.
Okay.
So one would be keep it landlocked. And second would be to construct an outlet. Here, you would need to work with the DNR to find out what their ordinary high water level is, because they have rules that say if you construct the outlet for a landlocked basin, your outlet can only be 1.5 feet below without having to get special legislation to do that. So without knowing that, don't even know if constructing an outlet would help out the situation, but assuming it would, you'd likely have to treat the water from Rose Lake before going downstream so that you don't increase the phosphorus load to Horseshoe Lake or West Lakeland Storage Site or Lake St. Croix, St. Croix River.
Quick question. Sorry. Who? Okay, thank you.
Perhaps you wouldn't need to treat for PFAS if you're moving water, if it's contaminated with PFAS, if you're moving it from one surface water to another surface water. I don't know if you'd be required or if you just want to do that to limit your liability. You need to look at what the increase in volume of water would be on downstream water bodies. Are you increasing the flow level of those water bodies? And if so, you need to purchase easements because you're doing that. You need to construct some basin to reduce that impact downstream. Rose Lake is pretty small, so you might not have to do a whole lot of that, but don't know unless you do a study. Could possibly do some off-peak pumping so that water levels of Horseshoe Lake, West Lakeland Storage Site at a certain elevation could pump from Rose Lake without creating higher water levels downstream. So those are the kind of things that you'd have to look at if you're creating an outlet. And all those would be expensive. The big cost would be if you have to treat for PFAS. Or you could maybe just develop some sort of emergency response plan and pump under emergency conditions. But then you still have to think about what are you doing downstream? What are you doing to the water quality of Horseshoe Lake, to West Lakeland Storage Site, to St. Croix River? And who's going to do that under what situation?
Right, so the PFAS and the phosphorus and everything is going to that, to West Lakeland to get pumped into that, first pond off of 10th and Neal before ending up down Neal where it stacks, and then ultimately into the St. Croix.
It's all gravity, but that's. So that's kind of a background on the history and potential scenarios. At Manager Gelman's suggestion, I did contact the Met Council and invited them to the meeting on Tuesday. Their wastewater person will be at that meeting.
It
I
will
also
be.
invited the DNR area hydrologist to that meeting, because if any outlets are planned, the DNR will.
I plan on attending. I've got a routine medical deal. And if I can attend, I will. Otherwise, any manager is more than welcome.
I'll probably attend that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, sir. Take copious notes and I'll explain all this.
And are
Yeah.
these, this is what they're gonna be discussing at the meeting, these possible solutions to the problem?
The agenda that they sent out yesterday. This,
Take that. Yeah, thank you, sir.
you see that?
Not really.
Bigger.
So. let's see. if I can make it bigger.
Okay.
Okay. I can sort of.
It's Tuesday, the 16th, from 10:30 until noon. Discussion items are current status. The county pumps 12 million gallons. Rose Lake dropped 21 inches. And the current status is stable. Treatment pond issues, risk assessment, Rose Lake elevation issues, the rapid infiltration basin issues related to Farmers Field. What are the options to move forward? Continue as is, water quality of Rose Lake, cost of pumping. Sewer construction connection. Improvement. New water control measures for Rose Lake culvert. How does the adjacent rapid infiltration basin system factor into any type of strategy? Also listed are the new school project, require extension of water and sewer from city stubs, Fifth Street. Does this present an opportunity in federal funding?
Those last two seem extremely appealing. Number one is to bring this one up. Since the school is going in, they are going to be bringing the sanitary sewer, then they certainly have line that could run to Cimarron. And as we discussed before, and everybody's likely aware, the cost for installing that on the private property will befall property owners, right? Okay.
Unless there's some grant or other way.
Right, yeah, that's another thing. We haven't even brought that up, but what I want to bring up, which to me it seems, and based on information that I have, and it's clear to me that this is all solved with sanitary sewer system completely. Everything else has risk. Everything else has cost and variables that we're not exactly aware of, meaning storm events, all sorts of things can happen. And since Lake Elmo has been on this endeavor to bring in sanitary sewer to every part of that city, then it seems like a no-brainer that it should happen here. Now, I'm not saying this to anger anybody that might be opposed to it or think different, but the logic is hard to refute. So with that said, you gentlemen can comment at will.
I agree. It just seems like the decision is kind of brainers, best option.
Now,
Connect them, but it's just a matter of coming up with cost. Yeah, it's the money. And I know Metropolitan Council has a big connection fee. It's what, a couple $1,000
Rick,
per
Yeah,
property. Or
here's where
something.
you come in, Rick, and you're right, forgive me, sir.
Yeah.
So now, you work for those nice folks, so maybe they could offer up something, or as you said, state and federal funds to possibly make this so, or to mitigate costs for the owners.
Well, and there's some, I think, some added incentive for Met Council to be involved, that this is, this is affordable housing we're
Right.
talking about,
Yes,
and it's at risk for affordable housing. And that's another key mission of the Met Council, is to create affordable housing and to maintain it. It seems like a double win. Council.
a win-win, whose pockets, right?
Huh?
Whose pockets? Yeah. And who's gonna ask, who's gonna put the hat out, so to speak? Is this countywide? Are they gonna involve as many LGUs as they can? Do they want to touch our coffers? I'd like to avoid that. I don't want to sound like a bad guy.
Well, I think it could be justified, some sort of financial commitment from us if it takes that, just because it really does impact the surface waters
Okay.
of our watershed. I'm not saying we should go that route, but if we did decide to kick in something, I think we can probably justify it.
Kind of like what we did down in Afton with the 50,000 a year for 10 years. We paid them $500,000 to help with their sanitation project. So, yeah, I can't argue that point. That's a good one. Sorry.
One question I have, going back to your original preface. This operator, what was in his head that he was thinking Valley Branch Watershed District screwed him up? How is that the case? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
So So again, this is 10th Street here, and Ray, over here. If I follow correctly and remember correctly, believe that this road somehow raised the overflow for Rose Lake and is causing the flooding, but there was a culvert put underneath that road to maintain the elevation that was there prior to the road.
Right. So that's his belief. Okay.
The meeting on Tuesday appears to only be for government entities. It doesn't appear that someone else.
Are those two little peninsulas in the north part of Rose Lake, is that where the original road went? Just, yeah, right there. Is that where that one road went?
No, so that the original county road, it was County 70 apparently. Went around the whole lake
Oh,
up here someplace. And then was it in the
50s?
late 60s or so?
Okay.
They built the road through the lake, and then this part was a driveway to a farmstead.
wow.
They did the same thing at Goose Lake, and that's an issue that's coming up. You guys are aware of that, because I've seen the topo maps of Goose Lake back in the day, and the road went around it on the north side. Okay. So pending any further discussion from any of the managers, what's our next step? Are we gonna sit at this meeting and
Managers, I plan to extend the meeting.
Yes, sir.
And it sounds like possibly President Marchand and Manager Armstrong would also be at that meeting. So if you weren't there, I would be looking for direction on what manager's position might be, if the managers do have a position on possible strategies moving forward. But if you're there, I guess you can speak for yourselves.
So two things, my procedure. Just gonna let the cat out of the bag. I'm getting a colonoscopy. It's a routine, whatever.
You won't be at the meeting.
Too much information. But it's not till after, excuse me. No, the meeting's between 10 and 12. And my procedure's not till the afternoon, so I can possibly.
So you'd be prepping.
Oh, you guys,
No.
whatever. man.
We don't want you there.
I'll bring my porta potty with me. Never ends.
Even though there will be wastewater services people.
Thank you, Rick.
Still don't think. Okay, well, so I guess that rules me out.
I'll be frank with my position, and Badger Armstrong has sort of made me see the light. Well, you know what I mean, that in addition to my view that sanitary sewer should come in, that we can help with that in some financial form. And then we can discuss that and they, you know, based on a determination of what they're going to do, because we've actually done this before, and this was down in Afton. So
It seems like Cimarron certainly has has to be part of the solution.
they're part of us. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're not leaving anybody out. This is all,
Yeah.
this falls into play with a lot of
covering
things.
the costs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And being a part of our decision.
but also,
I guess I have a
Yes.
question.
yes,
You know, we're all just guessing at
Yeah.
what it would take to connect. Is there something we could do as far as technical assistance to help them, you know, that have some engineering, I don't know how much, you
without
know,
a
a
doubt.
preliminary engineering report that would just kind of scope out some costs. Maybe is that a contribution we could put,
It is.
lay forward on the table? I'm asking a question.
Yes, sir. I think it is. I think Bar can definitely help.
Managers,
Yeah.
so right now, Stillwater School District is working with the city of Lake Elmo to do feasibility studies to determine short-term and long-term, I believe, connections for future Lake Elmo Elementary School, which is right here, and Oakland Junior High, which is right here. There is a lift station around the north side of Rose Lake that I think Oakland Junior High could temporarily discharge into that lift station. But I believe the city said that that's only temporary. The ultimate solution would be to construct a new line of the sanitary sewer system from basically where the drive-in used to be, to the north, and then a Y over to Oakland Junior High.
That would be on gravity then?
That would be gravity,
Okay.
because this is, I believe it's all force line down to the southern part of Cimarron, and then it's gravity beyond that. Because the school or Lake Elmo is looking at constructing a temporary lift station, I believe, and then into the gravity line in this area. So I don't know who's doing that study, if it's Focus Engineering, the city engineer consulting firm, or if it's another consultant. But if they're doing it for the two school sites, it seems like they could possibly do it for Cimarron. But I think the city doesn't do those feasibility studies unless they're asked, because there's probably a charge to the school, or in this case,
Now,
study.
it wouldn't be a problem for us to ask Bar Engineering, you in particular, if you're to make inquiries about that.
I think that'll be a discussion point on Tuesday.
Okay,
The
great.
city engineers invited to the meeting, so.
Okay.
Couple of questions you might not know the answer to, but just for the background of it. So would this sort of cesspool setup ever be approved today, or is that a remnant of something from the 70s that would be approved? Yeah, that Cimarron is using, and they're just grandfathered in using a system like that?
I think that's a good question, and I think a good question is how frequently is the permit reissued?
Mhm.
Because it seems unfortunate that they can continue to operate a system that can flood by several feet.
And
And it flooded within 10 years of construction.
And related to that, I mean, we're talking about Rose Lake flooding into that polishing area. How do they keep the polishing area during heavy rains and stuff from flooding into Rose Lake?
I don't understand the system, and that's a good question, because I think what they do. So this is the system, and
this air photo is too old, but I think this area over here might be where these rapid infiltration basins are. So I think that they pump water from their polishing pond into these rapid infiltration basins. Back in '83, Valley Branch allowed them to pump water from both Rose Lake and the lagoon into these rapid infiltration basins. Because I don't think there's a whole lot of seepage that goes through, or maybe they pump water from the polishing lagoon into Rose Lake. But if there's no way for the water to get up, the only way water's gonna get out is by evaporation or seepage, unless they're pumping water out. And they're pumping a lot of water in with the sewage.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's gotta be higher residency, there's more urbanization, there's more people,
And
more
the
water, events.
drainage area to Rose Lake between 1985 and today, the development really hasn't taken off in this part of Lake Elmo.
Okay,
There's one large lot development in this corner, just north of Cimarron, and then at the south edge of the golf course, there's some townhomes called Southwind now that drain through the golf course into Rose Lake. Otherwise, it really hasn't changed.
okay. I thought that maybe that was a factor.
But it has been wetter in the last
Yep.
decade.
And we're doing pretty good this year. Okay,
Okay,
So Manager Armstrong is planning to attend.
yes.
Is there another manager that would be attending?
We look at
Rick,
the
what do you
calendar.
think?
It's been an interesting issue.
You don't want to twist your arm.
The North Public Works Facility, if you haven't been there, it takes some time to drive up there. It's
Fire and road.
Oh, yeah.
Where is it exactly? Google Map, I guess.
16th,
11660 Myron, Myeron road. No, that's May Township, or they call it Stillwater, but it's
I'm not available that day.
Well, my procedure gets postponed for some
I
reason.
can. Yeah, I can go to.
it doesn't seem like they're looking for any decisions made, but they're looking to move closer to some sort of strategy.
Mr. Bill, do you feel comfortable laying down some testimony?
Sure.
Okay. That would be,
I'm forwarding the appointments to.
and you have the background.
Great, thank you.
Before we go to our big guns, right? Yeah. Because we'll be presenting to you due time. Right now, it's up in the air.
John, this history, did you put together, will they have access to that at the meeting, or did they put it together? Who put together the history?
I put it together. I don't know how much they want to dwell on the history compared to how to focus on moving forward.
Sure.
I put it together because, like I said, the wastewater treatment operator was pointing the finger at Valley Branch Watershed District, and I wanted to understand whether that had merit or not.
Mhm. Well, I always think having that broad perspective on what the situation, is, the holistic view is really helpful, especially at the beginning of a discussion like this.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how long it took us to discuss that, but their whole meeting was an hour and a half. But
Yeah.
I mean, this history would be a big chunk of
Yeah.
it, so.
I think your
Good.
summary of, we looked into it and we haven't impacted it. We have the documentation if you want to see it.
Thank you, sir.
Or maybe sharing this.
Get all excited. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. That's what we're here for. Okay. I'll back off. So that's what we plan on doing. We all understand each other on this. Okay, John will do the presentation. Mr. Bill will deliver some pertinent information and ask some wonderful questions that you've established. And I would like to add, even though this is a public meeting, I would like to add, we don't necessarily determine at this point a monetary commitment to what we're doing outside of possibly, as you suggested, having bar engineering contact Lake Elmo and consider getting involved in a study, i.e. Engineering, evaluation, whatever, right? Make this so.
If Focus Engineering's been doing the study or another consultant's been doing the study, I think that they would be better at doing the study because they're more familiar with,
Oh, I get that.
the details.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to make sure somebody was going to be putting some numbers to it.
And Rick, if you are so inclined, no disrespect, no pressure, you feel like attending,
Yeah.
you can scare them all and say, I work for the Met Council. You don't want me scared.
That was a long time.
Yeah, I know. I can just imagine what I would say under that anesthetic. Okay.
Yeah, I think the value there is kind of knowing how the organization operates and some of the priorities, at least they have been used.
Clearly. Very good. I thought we tackled this one pretty good because I was befuddled a bit. How do we go about this, and we can't just, like I thought, which is, okay, yeah, just put it in a sewer. That's the end of that. Yeah, that's why we need all these managers here to flesh this thing out. Okay. We still have an issue with the managers, but our next item B, everybody will attend the 25th and August 8th and 7th, August 8th. I assume,
I will not be here the meeting. The other,
25th,
the
July.
Valley Branch regular meeting.
Yes,
The
sir.
second one of July, I will not be able to.
We will miss you.
I'll be somewhere in Iowa.
Well.
Sorry about that.
You're not climbing. to the
Oh, I
heights.
don't-
I don't go like Mount Kilimanjaro. Africa.
Oh, my God.
I go to Iowa.
Oh, yeah, the softball, oh, my God. I'm staying home. Okay, so it appears we'll easily have a quorum. And Don's gonna obviously back by that. Budget workshop meeting will be August 20th. Everybody's aware of that one.
Marshawn, I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
you skipped ahead a little bit.
I did, when did I miss?
We're on B2
Whoa,
or B3 now, the Minnesota Watersheds
oh, B,
resolution.
forgive me. Okay. Yeah, I did get it a while, but those are covered. Okay. Request for Minnesota watershed resolutions. I went over this. I have some questions now. Before we get into this one, and John, I want you to lead us in this, even though we more or less understand what's happening here. I prefer that Vice President Pereira could give us some useful information about what's happening here. But the first thing that came up was these resolutions and how they affect us, whether we need them or not. I have questions on this. This is something that could take quite some time. So I'm wondering how the managers feel about discussing this and not in violation of the open meeting rules. Or ask John or talk to our representative, which is going to be Vice President Pereira with the watershed people. But I had some things here I do not agree with, I do not like, some things I'm not sure, and other things we need. And that's just relating to the these things that are going to sunset, what are these, the resolutions?
Mr. President,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
so this time of the year,
The organization asks all the members if they have any new resolutions that they'd like to submit.
Right.
You have plenty of time, you have until September 1st.
Okay.
So I looked at that.
Assume everybody has been. And there's more information here about what they do.
I got the impression from the,
I'm sorry, Del.
from the, you know, at the tour that, that the, lobbying group for the Watershed, organization, Minnesota Watershed, is quite a bit more revitalized.
Okay.
And so, like, this probably becomes a little more important
Yes,
in terms of, how it is handled, so it's probably worthwhile spending some time.
I agree. And the one
I
thing,
think Don for really needs to be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Connection.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you completely. And but looking at these things, a lot of this legislative stuff is a need for funding. A lot of funding going on here. If this sort of stuff is going to be passed, and again, they're lobbyists, so doesn't mean anything's going to happen. It just means that they're going to lobby for it. They want money for some of these items. So anyway, I assume everybody's had a look or going to have a look at this because of our timetable. And then we're going to contact at your leisure, Mr. Pereira, and discuss some of these things, unless you'd like to discuss them with other people.
I just have one thing I'd like to mention as I was going through these,
Yeah.
the water reuse one. I actually received a phone call from a lady, and I determined after talking to her for a little bit, she actually was in the middle of St. Croix water management organization area, not in Valley Branch, but
Yeah,
she was in a development that does the reuse, and she was asking very pertinent questions about potential health effects when the reuse water is being sprayed on her lawn. And I didn't have a good answer. I said, I think it's an excellent question. And I guess I was, at the time of that call, I thought maybe it'd be something for us to discuss or find out what research there is, because we are having this put in our permits. I mean, it's more of a discussion than this,
Right.
you know, for the resolution, but you know, as I went through here, that just triggered that thought. So I don't want to belabor it, but it's just
No.
something I thought might want to bring up. And I don't know if it's something we could ask FAR just to give us a summary of a literature review of what of the current information that's out there on potential health impacts of reuse water. If people would be comfortable with that, just for our own edification.
I agree with that. That's extremely useful because I brought up that issue with the sanitation on the Rose Pond or whatever that's called. So yeah, this is important, and also with surface water, PFAS, everything that's happening. It would be prudent to get some background information, just like John provided us on this history for the Cimarron situation. Do a little research, John. Ask him.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Department of Health has investigated exactly the question.
Okay, so if you could bring us that information at a meeting, preferably one where I'm attending, I would appreciate it.
After the 25th.
Yeah.
Call him in Iowa. Please. Sorry. Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you, John. And you too, John. Okay, I skipped all this stuff. Let me go back to the glasses are fogging. Policy humidity. Okay, watershed resolutions. Inspector's not here today. Where's Mr. Brower? Vacation. I miss him. I understand. I'm not going to cry. It's okay. And now the managers. Rick, take us to your investment report, which I thoroughly enjoyed, by the way. That's the way you do it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So things are things are moving along, both in terms of, the investments, we're in the process of completing the investment ladder with the bond, the 2-year fixed bond, CDs. Excuse me. So that'll be completed with this coming up round of, this month. And I think that bodes well for us in terms of being able to, be as efficient as possible about what kind of return we're getting on the money that we've got invested. We also will have all of the money that remains in the bond proceeds available in the money market fund after the 18th of this month. So we're able to, to use that money promptly, with the recommendations that I made. Unless there's questions that people have about it, I'd make a motion so that people.
I do have a discussion, sir.
Yeah.
I have a question. So on your last bullet for remaining tasks, close Lake Elmo bank account, when is this, would it possibly take care of what is left?
I am hoping by the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
My experience though so far has been that there were reasons why it was worthwhile having the account available. So I've made deposits to the Lake Elmo account a couple of times while the procedure for making deposits at US Bank and transferring it is getting smoothed out. It's moving along, but it's just a fairly slow process.
Did we incur any costs at Lake Elmo Bank with these transactions or anything?
I haven't seen
They're
any,
tracking, okay.
I haven't seen any expenses so far. We're not actively using it other than the deposit money. And the last time I checked with we had one check that was outstanding. And we have more than enough to cover that.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yes,
just
sir.
have one question, somewhat related. Are we okay now with our bond proceeds and with that recent real estate offer we made and everything and that expenditure? Are we okay? We're still on thin ice a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, we're still on thin ice.
Okay. I'm just curious.
We reduced the amount with that purchase.
Right.
But we still have got close to $2 million.
Okay.
Right, to
Just
spend
curious.
down.
Yep, thank you.
I think we've got 1.9 million in that account available. So we got more than enough to cover.
How would you like your spouse to tell you, here's $2 million, now you better spend it? Holy moly. Well, Rick, this is all on the up and up, and clearly you've been doing your homework, and this is excellent. I think it's pretty thorough. So what would you like to make a motion on, sir?
I'd like to move that we invest $400,000 in a 1-year term and $400,000 in a 2-year term in the general fund. And that we and that no new fixed income investments be made in the bond proceeds.
I will second that motion.
Aye.
Before that, forgive me, sir, I also had a discussion question
Okay.
about that. That's 4%, 5%.
Yeah, let's see. I believe it's mostly been something over 4%.
Okay,
That is substantial.
very good, sir.
And I'm anticipating that, assuming that the rates go down, we're locked in for 2 years at least on some of them.
Yes,
Which is good.
yes, sir. I agree with that. I hope that that is the case.
Mhm.
So it was moved and seconded, and sir,
Aye.
aye,
Aye.
it is so approved.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's an excellent. Correct. Ancillary duties. Keeping, we're keeping you busy.
Yeah,
Sorry. Okay,
well, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. here.
yeah. Really. No medical jokes. Okay, good.
Say after the call.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah. See? I got a big mouth, I'm sorry. Okay, we discussed the Cimarron situation. Where we're going to attend the budget workshop, of course. Then that falls on D, if I'm following this properly. Thank you, Counselor. Our chloride management workshop. Now, a very quick question on that. John, have you contacted anybody like from South Washington to possibly attend?
I had talked to
Anywhere?
them, I'll follow up and make sure that they remember.
They'd like to.
South Washington, East Washington.
Ask them nicely. Thank you, sir. Okay. Now, the other issue, we're going to E. I'd like to attend this because I've got a thing about foot-long hot dogs. The Washington County Fair in Baytown Township, July 31 to August 4th. I don't know if we're invited to, whether it's to sit with the Washington Conservation District to man their stations or anything else that might have us doing. But John, if you can make some quick inquiries, I know that.
Vice President, I think Angie Hong.
Ms. Hong, yeah. She's gonna, yeah, have her ask us availabilities and see what's on the menu. Forgive me. Very good. Lower St. Croix Partnership Workshop. Conservation Development Tour in North Washington County, Wednesday, August 7th. Okay, that's something that I may be able to attend. What's happening there?
Mr. President, they're having a couple different workshops. I believe this one is to look. I think this one, and maybe getting it confused with other
Yeah,
tours, but I think this one is to look at some conservation development, so looking at, Rio St. Croix,
pertinent to our,
with all the white. Yep, structures.
any,
Looking at cluster development.
Oh.
They
good.
built some homes close together and then. I think this tour is,
I think that would be useful information for us.
but I'll forward, the details.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Those are probably private sewer systems.
Yeah, I believe that the one that I'm thinking of, that I can't remember the name of it. I'll think of it eventually. I think that's actually a wetland system. Treatment system.
Mhm.
Jacksonville.
Okay, so you'll let us know about that. We got everything covered in this memo from John Perkins. You did cover that, sir,
Yes.
correct? Okay, very good. We're good to go. One more item. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by everybody. We are
Aye.
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 Adjourned.